Hi, everyone. And I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to this evening's career networking program hosted by the Willamette University Sustainability Network. My name is Leah Sheldon, she, they pronouns, and I'm from Alumni Engagement. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Before we begin, let me share a few logistical items. This evening's session is intended to help current students and young alums connect with Bearcats who are established in a sustainability-oriented career, and I can't wait for you to meet our panelists. Please be sure that your microphone is muted during the presentation portion of this session. And now I will introduce this evening's host, Victoria Binning. Victoria works as the program director for the Resource Assistance for Rural Environments, RARE program. She's an alum from the College of Arts and Sciences class of 2014, unabashed lover of Oregon trivia, and two-time AmeriCorps alum. Victoria is a food systems thinker and has a diverse background in community gardens, farming, winemaking, sales, and agricultural extension. Her own rare year from 2015 to 2016 was spent on the Southern Oregon coast, getting to the root of challenges facing local seafood and the small boat fishing industry, where she learned that land-based food systems don't directly translate to the ocean. Victoria is a leader and key organizer for the alumni affinity group Willamette University Sustainability Network. Thanks for hosting us this evening, Victoria.
Thank you so much, Leah. It sounds really impressive when you say it all together. But welcome, everybody. It's such a treat to have you here. It was also just such a treat to be connecting with all the other fantastic alumna who are with us. And I'm really excited for you all to hear their stories. But before we get too much further, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement and to say that we are gathered on the land here in the Willamette Valley of Oregon. We are gathered on the land of the Kalapuya, who today are represented by the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians, whose relationship with this land continues to this day. And we offer our gratitude for the land itself, for those who have stewarded it for generations, and for the opportunity to study, learn, work, and be in community with this land. We also acknowledge that our university's history is fundamentally tied to the first violent colonial developments in the Willamette Valley. So we respectfully acknowledge and honor the past, present, and future Indigenous students of Willamette. And as we consider the content of this presentation and the alumni panel here today, I hope and I invite you to consider your own positionality and how to take today's lessons to honor those negatively impacted by histories similar to our university. So as mentioned, this event is hosted by the Willamette University Sustainability Network. And our network is a phenomenal affinity group of Willamette graduates, staff, faculty, current students, folks who are interested in sustainability-related issues writ broadly. You don't have to have been an environmental science major to join us. If you are interested in long-term sustainability of our people and our planet, we invite you to join us. We're interested in sustainability-related issues, and we work in sustainability-related fields. Many of our alumni are engaged primarily to build connections, to share resources, and to advocate for change. And as I mentioned, anyone who's interested is welcome to join. You may have heard of WUConnect. And if you're on there, which I encourage you to be, you could find us underneath the community page. We have a very snazzy page that you can hop on. Last month, we had our quarterly meeting and everyone was very excited for tonight's event and felt a whole lot of gratitude for panelists who are here to share their story of how they went from Willamette University to where they are now. And before I introduce all of these fine folks or have them introduce themselves, I encourage you to be listening for questions that you might have of these panelists. How did they get to where they are? What is it that you want to know? What connection do you want to make with these folks? Or what question is on the tip of your tongue that you really want to know? And I encourage you to drop those in the chat as we go along, but also after everyone has a chance to introduce themselves, we're going to open it up so that you can ask those questions directly, and we invite you to be in conversation with us so that we all can learn together. So I'm going to have all of our panels introduce themselves. Please we're going to go in the order that's just right here, handily on the slides in front of you. And I'll have you introduce yourself with your name, your pronouns, your class year, and your current job title. Give us a brief overview of your career trajectory, and then share a sentence or two about your current role. And we'll spend like 3 to 5 minutes on each person, and then we'll see what juicy questions our attendees have for us. So, Liz, if you wouldn't mind going first, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here. Yeah, my name is Liz Gill, she, her pronouns. I graduated in 2017 from the College of Arts and Sciences and was a politics major with a double minor in environmental science and economics. My current title, I just had a title change. I was a policy analyst up to this point, and I am now a project leader for energy equity and environmental justice initiatives at the laboratory. So I work at the National Renewable Laboratory, but directly following graduating Willamette, I went straight to grad school. Happy to talk about that choice. If anyone is, considering that, there's definitely positives and negatives to that path. But following grad school, I was a part of a fellowship program with the federal government called the Presidential Management Fellows. And I worked for the Department of the Interior, where I did water policy and essentially grant administration, looking at water conservation in the West. I wanted to be in renewable energy. That's really what I wanted to do. So I ended up leaving. It was also during the Trump administration. So it was an interesting time to work in the federal government. So I moved to the laboratory, and I've been there ever since. And have kind of worked my way up since being there. I've been there about 3.5 years. The labs are really unique places to work. There's 17 DOE national laboratories, and you do a real split. It's kind of quasi-academic, quasi-program program management and administration. And so I run some technical assistance programs focused on community energy planning, but then also do some kind of more traditional social science research publishing type of work. So happy to expand more, but I'll stop there for now.
Thank you so much for that, Liz. And thank you for dropping so many little nuggets where people might drop in and ask you more questions. Well done. Shannon, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'd love to. So my name is Shannon. My pronouns are she, hers. I graduated with my bachelor's in environmental science and an MBA in 2021. So not too long ago, but I'm currently the forestry program manager at HP. I started my career at HP in May of 2020. So right at the beginning of the pandemic. I started off as a sustainability intern for the chief engineer in the CTO organization, and then converted full-time after I graduated in June of 2021. It was really a role focused on the intersection between sustainability and innovation. And I absolutely loved it. And I recently transitioned actually over to our forestry program more particularly. So digging back into those environmental science roots. So my current role, I focus a lot on relationship management with our NGO partners. I have the amazing honor and opportunity to talk to the Arbor Day Foundation, World Wildlife Fund, and Conservation International, and really get some engagement and have some really powerful and great conversations with them, and be able to take that back to HP and incorporate it into our forestry strategy and governance going forward. So thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here and looking forward to connecting.
Oh, we're so happy to have you. And I'm sure many people are going to be surprised that there is forestry at HP. What's that all about? And so I'm just very excited for what questions are going to come your way. But thank you for that, Shannon. Marissa, would you like to go next?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Marissa. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. I graduated from Willamette with my bachelor's in 2020. And thank you. I studied music and environmental science at Willamette, so shout out Willamette Music. And after graduating, I worked at Allaire State Park in my home state of New Jersey, I was in charge of the administrative and visitor services aspects of the park. And I worked there for 2 years, but I kind of worked there seasonally. So in between that, I was also working for an organization called the Appalachian Mountain Club, and they do a lot of outdoor recreation facilities in all around the Northeast. And so I specifically worked at some of their facilities in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. And I worked there because I grew up going to the White Mountains. I had been to these cabins before, and I really wanted to work there truly out of passion. And then I ended up learning so much as a naturalist there in the outdoor education kind of field. So I'd love to answer any questions about that. And then after that kind of seasonal 2-year period after graduating, I am now in my current position. My current title is Southern Maine Sustainability Fellow. So I'm located in Portland, Maine, and the program that I'm doing is a sort of AmeriCorps program. It's run by AmeriCorps and also the Greater Portland Council of Governments, which is a regional planning organization here. So the program is called Resilience Corps, and I'd be super happy to answer any questions about that or about AmeriCorps. And I know that Victoria is also an AmeriCorps alum, so shout out AmeriCorps. And I do a lot of varied things in my role at the regional planning organization that I am at. I do climate action planning, I do outreach and engagement, I do data analysis, and it's for a range of projects from municipal to regional. And it's an 8-month program, and I've only been in this role for 2 months now, but the amount that I have learned, let me tell you, it's gone from here to here. Like, my brain is so full of great new information. It's been awesome. So, yeah. Happy to answer any questions and really excited to be here. And I'm glad that we're doing this. This is great.
Thank you so much for that, Marissa. And if anyone was under the illusion that once you graduate from Willamette, you have all the knowledge that you need for the rest of forever, we are unfortunately here to burst your bubble. You're never going to stop learning. But I think any of us within the sustainability field can speak to the not unto ourselves alone motto, right? We are all doing this for the community and for the future. And I'd love to transition now to Diana. We're getting even a little further away than Portland, Maine. Let's go across an ocean. Diana, would you share next, please?
Hi, good morning. I'm Diana Ibarra, and I think I am the age on the stage today. It's great to see all of the exciting things that you guys are doing, because I think it's a great time to be in all sustainability jobs. And I track closely women in sustainability is kind of one of my little passion projects. So I appreciate seeing all of you and being a part of this. So I'm actually a class of 82. But I didn't get my degree until 83 because I was a part of the 3-2 engineering program at Willamette. And then I completed my engineering degree at Stanford. So a shout out to the 3-2. My US-based home is in Montana, and I've spent over 30 years overseas. So after I graduated from Stanford in chemical engineering, I worked in Silicon Valley as a semiconductor processing engineer. And then I moved to Europe with Philips. And I I also did managing. I was a management consultant there. So if you graduated in 1982, you have lots of different jobs. But one of the things that I did was I do have my first master's degree is from Boston University in management. And I actually was able to do that in Brussels, Belgium. And then I was a management consultant. And in 1993, we moved back to Montana, to my home state. And my US-based home is in Bozeman. And I took 20 years out of my life to raise my kids. So I just really was committed to that. And once my oldest was about 20, I came back into the workforce. And I've been here in Hong Kong working in an educational K-12 school since then. So I love my job. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. While I was in Montana, I also completed my master's in environmental engineering. And this was a degree in looking at phosphorus removal through constructed wetlands. So that was my second master's in civil engineering. And then since I've been here in Hong Kong, I started out, I lived here with the kids, we were here with the kids, and then I came back to teach here. And this school is, the Shuyuan, the word Shuyuan is an ancient Chinese word that means a place of learning. And it would be the academies of, deep scholarship that would happen in the Forbidden City in Beijing. And as the director of Shuyuan here, I'm kind of the school within the school, and I'm the school outside of the school. And one of the roles that I took on is if I was going to be in an educational setting, I insisted upon setting up some pretty innovative sustainability programs. And now what I'm doing, because everyone needed a COVID project, is I'm about 15 months from finishing my PhD in sustainability education. So lifelong learner. And, I don't see any barriers to taking on challenges. So the sustainability projects that we've got going here is we've got a microgrid. We've composted all of our food waste since 2014. I take students around the world to international conferences on student-led research projects about anything and everything environmental science and sustainability based. We have 2 research labs on campus. We're really blurring the lines between tertiary education and high school. Secondary school. And I have incredibly fond memories of Willamette. It was a different place when I was there. I was a member of Delta Gamma. However, I'm still in touch with my favorite professor from Willamette, Dr. Frances Chappell, who is in chemistry with me. I don't know. I think she retired about 2008, 2009, but no. She retired in about 2002 or 2003. Anyway, still in touch with Frances, and thrilled to be here. I am more than happy to talk about international education and some of these other experiences and what it means to come in and out of the workforce, because I'm a strong believer in that as well. So I'll leave it for there.
Oh my gosh, you took that prompt about lifelong learning. You just ran with it. I didn't even mean to set you up for that. That was amazing. But I appreciate that nugget too, about sharing your experience raising kids and then being in the working world again. That's really important perspective to bring. So Morgan, we're going to come back on home and go to the Oregon State Capitol. Would you go next, please?
Certainly. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm Morgan Gratz-Weizer. I graduated in 2013 from I guess now it's the College of Arts and Sciences. I studied environmental science with a minor in geography and had a wonderful time doing that. And upon graduating, was trying to figure out what I wanted to do and was interested in environmental work and natural resources and the intersection with policy. Didn't quite know what to do. I ended up moving home and working at our family's kind of bar restaurant for a little bit. So those initial detours are totally normal when you don't quite know what you're doing next. But I moved up to Portland, and I still live in Portland now. And I got my foot in the door volunteering with a nonprofit, and just kind of volunteered my way into a limited duration part-time job with them that got extended and then extended again. And so I really can't overstate the benefit of networking and just, trying a volunteer gig here and there if and when you have capacity for that in a field that you're interested in, because it's a great way to meet people. I ended up doing a master's program at Lewis and Clark Law School. There's a handful of law schools that will do a kind of sub-master's program. So I'm not a lawyer, not qualified, not bar certified, anything like that. But I did take a whole suite of environment and natural resource law classes, which was really a great time, really educational. I feel like I have a much better grounding in the environmental law space, and just being able to understand our legal system and our administrative system in a better way. Coming out of that, I was hired, wasn't planning actually to do anything politics related, still wanted to stay focused on environmental work, but I got hired to be staff for a Oregon state senator. And so I worked for that state senator for a couple of years. And when he retired, I moved to the Senate Majority Office to be a policy advisor. And in that portfolio had environment and natural resources work amongst a number of other topics. And from there, I really did want to focus in on environment and natural resources work and sustainability. And so I got a job with Oregon Environmental Council, which is a nonprofit. And so I led their kind of political and policy advocacy work. I was their lobbyist for 3 years. And I loved that job and got to work on a wide range of topics in climate and clean energy and transportation equity, kind of working to reduce emissions and improve mobility and transit and bike infrastructure kind of through the state policy lens, and worked on some water and drought issues and environmental health. And something I really appreciated was the intersection of the science with the public health lens and doing climate, clean energy, natural resources work with the intersection of public health. And then it was a super grateful move. I was asked to join the former Governor Kate Brown's office for her last year and change in office. They needed someone to join their natural resources team. And so I did that and loved working for her and got to continue on in a lot of the same conversations I had been in from my role at Oregon Environmental Council, doing a lot of water and drought policy and kind of working through some forestry issues and learning a lot more about how our state agencies work and the interworkings and the actual staff day-to-day work that they are doing around air and land quality and water resource management, which has just been really fascinating to kind of get that next layer and a new vantage point to help support the state agencies in their work. And finally, I'm super grateful that Governor Kotek opted to keep me on. And so I have changed roles and I'm not natural resource focused at the moment. I'm serving as her deputy legislative director. So we have two of us who are kind of the main points of contact with the state legislature right now for Governor Kotek's legislative priorities. So we are in the middle of the state legislative session and keeping things busy. The governor's current focuses are housing and homelessness, behavioral health and addiction services, as well as early literacy and education services. So that is where my current focus is over the last couple of months. But I do work with our natural resources team closely as we are continuing on a lot of really important climate, clean energy, and water resource management and forest management work. So I still get to dabble in that space, which is really nice. That's what brings me here today.
Thank you so much for that, Morgan. And I really appreciate, well, one, I heard lots of grit and tenacity and commitment in your story, but I really appreciate you starting with the vulnerability of like, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I graduated. I had no idea, but now look at me. I'm a freaking deputy legislative director. So thank you for sharing that and for sharing the many iterations of learning that you have gone through. There's a theme I'm noticing. All right. Last, but most certainly not least, Alexis, would you go next, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's hard to follow up after Morgan. It's nice to see you on the panel, friend. So I am probably going to be the biggest outlier of this whole panel because my entire history is actually not sustainability. So that's also another way you can go about it is you can decide later on. So I'll speak to that. But a little bit about me, starting with my experience at Willamette. So I got I went through the 3-2 program, which I'm a huge fan of. So BA, MBA within 5 years. So 2013, BA, MBA in 2014. My undergrad was a combination of politics, math, and Spanish. again, nothing environmental. I studied abroad in Ecuador in my junior year, and some activities that I was in, I was on varsity rowing for a Willamette crew team. And I also was ASBU senator and also VP of administration. So I am a huge fan of leadership and how that plays into my experience throughout my career. So that's a little bit about Willamette. And yeah, I definitely agree with what Morgan was saying on trying to figure out what feels right for you as you leave Willamette. And not judging yourself on that journey. I'm just going to pretty much skip to my current position. I've been at Nike for about 6 years. I've been all across the company. And as of about a year and a half, I've had the pleasure of overseeing the global tech sustainability portfolio, which is a huge deal. So basically any work that happens by our 5,000 global tech employees that is connected to sustainability is what I speak to. And so I report directly into the CDIO and also the CSO, which is our Chief Sustainability Officer at Nike. So you might be wondering, okay, well, what are some of these initiatives that I oversee? And so we have within global tech, we have developers, we have analysts, we have data engineers, all different sorts getting after this work, partnering with our business side of Nike, which is we have chemistry directors, waste directors. We have people who really understand sustainability a whole lot more than me. And we partner with them and bring to life their vision of what should happen essentially for sustainability for Nike. And so when we were thinking about what does that look like for Nike, some of the programs that I actually oversee and ensure the success of is, for instance, One Box. So if you ever ordered shoes off of Nike direct to consumer, so directly to your doorstep, then it traditionally has come a box within a box. One box is one box. So instead of two boxes, now we're going to one. There's actually, when you think about something as simple as that, it's actually very complex because there's a lot of theft that happens with Nike items. And so we have to think about, okay, our box has to be re-engineered. It has to be made of, cardboard so it doesn't attract attention. There's just a lot of pieces to it. Traceability. So traceability is basically from seed all the way to product. Do we know every single farm, every single factory, and can we make the claims that we're making? Right now, there are blind spots. And so we're actually getting the technology behind it to basically, anytime a customer pings us a question, we actually have the real-time data to prove that we're doing what we're saying that we're doing. Another one to think about is Nike finished product waste or refurbished. It's really cool in stores. There's actually a specific section called Nike Refurbished. And so there's quite a different a lot of different types of clothing falls in this category. It can be returned items that can't be directly resold because maybe you use them, you go on a walk and they're scuffed up. And so then they get refurbished and they go into the refurbished category. But it's also older stuff or older styles, I guess you could say, that we have a whole refurbished team that actually basically utilizes that. And we also have some really cool items that we are partnering with the community on, really cool designers who basically leverage our vintage items and make them new, kind of more improved items. And another one that I'll kind of end with is no rush shipping. You've probably seen this from competitors, hopefully from people like Target or that's the one that comes to mind. But it is a default for swoosh or members of Nike. And basically we think about people want items now. And so no rush shipping essentially elongates the timeline, maybe by a week or so, where we don't have to put things on a plane. We can put things on a truck and it is not as carbon intensive. So these are just some examples of programs that I make sure not only have success, but our board and our C-suite have full understanding of the impact. So we keep investing in sustainability at Nike. So I'm more than happy to speak to sustainability, to speak to Nike, anything around navigating that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Alexis. And while you might see yourself as an outlier, we're very glad to have you in the fold now. Those are some programs that have a huge impact on sustainability for our country. So, yay. And now is the part where now that you have heard all these phenomenal stories of women in sustainability who are doing some truly phenomenal things. I don't know about you. I'm feeling very inspired. Just to recap, we've heard about corporate sustainability. We've heard about sustainability within education. We've heard about it within local government, state government. We're hearing about research being done within the sustainability realm. There's just a breadth of sustainability topics here. And so before we even jump into the Q&A, I invite you to just take a deep breath and think about what is sticking out to you right now. What is the exciting thing that you want to learn more about? And I hope you take whatever question is bubbling up for you and you bring it into this space with us. And in fact, I actually invite some of our panelists, if you feel called to ask questions of each other, that's what this is all about, is bringing the network together. So please don't be shy, because any question that's asked in this space is just going to contribute to our learning overall. So we've got some Q&A topics up on the screen here. You've got some at the top of your brain. I'd love to invite a brave question asker to go first and ask a question of this great panel.
I have a question for Liz. You mentioned your experience of going straight to grad school right after graduating from Willamette, and I would love to hear how that was for you and just your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I'm assuming that most of the really cool ladies on this call were pretty involved during their time at Willamette. I found that, so I'm currently living with my partner who is in grad school now at like 29. And he just has a lot more like excitement and energy than I did, because I was like so burnt out. I went straight through. I told myself, like, I'm not joining any clubs. I'm not doing any leadership positions. So I think that's one piece of it. Like, everyone I know who's like in their late 20s, it's like, it's really hard to go back to school. You're like used to having money. There's a lot of reasons why it's hard to go back to school, but also people are generally there for like a really specific reason. And I went to grad school because like, I thought I should go to grad school, not because like I figured out what I wanted to do and picked the grad degree that would best suit me to do that. On the other side of the coin, like, it's worked out fine. Like, I actually went to grad school abroad, so happy to talk about that too. It was much cheaper. But so the fellowship program I talked about, I think it's the best example of this. I was really excited to get into that fellowship, but then I had a really hard time competing for the positions in the fellowship because I was a lot younger. So I think that like there's trade-offs. It's great to not have to go back to school. But there are definitely considerations. And I think if it's better to know exactly what you want to do if you're going to pay for that degree. Yeah. Those are my thoughts. Any specific questions? Like, are you considering going to grad school?
I am considering grad school, but it's definitely a nebulous idea in my mind still. So I was just curious to hear your experience. And I just want to ask the follow-up question that I feel like we're all curious about. Where did you study?
Oh, I was at the University of Oxford. Went which I'd be happy to talk about too if you're interested. It's very academic. I would say like most schools in Europe are very academic. And so like it's worked out okay for me because my job is actually very academic. However, it's like split down the middle. Like I do very much like government. It's like kind of like I work at a federal agency. The labs are kind of an extension of federal agencies. But then I also do like super social sciencey stuff at the same time. And so I've actually gotten to use it, but yeah, very like theory-based, like preparing you to do a PhD. So just be sure you know exactly what the curriculum is before you go. So I didn't. So, yeah.
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah.
I might just jump in with another thought on that, if that's okay. Just thinking through how I eventually came to the idea of going to grad school as well. And I think it's really helpful to identify people who are in careers that seem really interesting and ask them kind of what their path was to get there and what their grad program was, and if they thought that that program was actually helpful. I spent a while thinking I wanted to go to law school and talked to a lot of people who were doing conservation policy work and who had gone to law school and kind of weighed out if that was the right path or not. And so I ultimately chose a non-law program. And I think that was a good move for me. And I think that would probably apply for a lot of other grad programs as well, to kind of see the end goal that's interesting and kind of work backwards from the folks who are doing that work.
I think we all thought we were going to go to law school at one point. I absolutely thought I would get a lot of grades, and that did not happen.
I'm a big advocate of stalking people on LinkedIn that you find really inspiring and think that their job is really cool. Stalk them on LinkedIn and then figure out what they did. And if that's something that you want to do.
The other piece to that I would add, sorry to butt back in here, is oftentimes it's great to have that conversation with somebody who has a job title that sounds really cool, because it may or may not be what you think that job is. And the day-to-day might actually be quite different. So it's helpful in the learning process.
I think that's what talked me out of law school. I had an informational interview with some random person in Portland, and I decided I didn't want to do that. Diana, I saw you unmuted. You want to jump in?
I think the other thing is there's so many different ways to go back to school, and there's so many different programs that are out there that it is really, it's up to you to be able to drill down on. Be open-minded to where, when, how, and what. It's also kind of, it's okay to also go to grad school kind of where you land. So, and what I mean by that is when I was living in Europe and wanted to do a graduate degree, Brussels was the easiest way for me to do it from Eindhoven. And so that's what worked. And that's what I applied to. And that's what I committed to. And the same thing in Montana. I was raising two little boys. And I have to tell you, it was mind-numbingly boring. And so that's where I got involved. And I started a master's degree in environmental engineering. And when I did that, I actually then we got moved out here to Hong Kong, and Montana State University wrote to me, the grad school did, and said, thank you very much, but you're no longer eligible for this master's degree. And I was okay with that because I loved what I learned. It was so cool. So then all of a sudden I'm on the ski hill in Bozeman, and I introduced myself to my kid's Montessori school teacher who's sitting at the table with my former advisor at Montana State. And Al looks at me, the professor, Al looks at me and goes, I want you to come back. I'm like, well, yeah, I got this letter from Montana State. I'm not going to be able to. He was like, I'll see you in my office on Monday morning. I was registered and back in classes to finish this degree. And they pretended like I was overseas military or something. I don't know how they did it. But the take-home message of this was they said to me, I was registered and in class before the results of my tuberculosis test for my getting onto campus physical, the results were in. And I was sitting back in class again. And, at that point, I don't even know how old I was. I was like 45, 46. No, how old was I? I don't know, 48. And I basically, about that. Anyway, and I basically was not afraid to ask every question in the book. So when they would throw up a partial differential math equation that I could have done in my in a previous life, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to ask some questions about that. And I would have people come up to me afterwards and say, oh, thank you for asking that a question I was afraid to ask. So no shame in asking questions. I think those are the skills that, but I didn't apply to other engineering programs because my US-based home was in Montana. So I think that you don't have to look far afield for this. There's opportunities right where you are. And from a sustainability point of view, there's a lot of talk. It's an important concept to understand place and to have a deep understanding of where you live and how you can impact where you are. And so I don't know. I just recommend, look far afield if there's an amazing program, but don't be afraid to look local too. And there's more than one way to slice this. And trust me, I've sliced it in the more crazy ways than anybody you know. I'm not a typical educator and I don't have a typical education job here. So, I can't speak to classroom teaching because I've just always done, so much program and so much collaboration and outside partnerships and stuff. So again, not a typical job, but I do, my recommendation would be, don't be afraid to slice and dice this differently.
Yeah, I like the advice too. Keep it simple, silly. Always a good reminder. What else is popping up for folks? Things that you got a burning question, or even just be bold and ask the question that's on all of our minds. Follow Diana's lead.
Hi there. I'm Frankie. I graduated in 21 in environmental science and anthropology. Navigating like post graduation, I did some seasonal jobs, and I have a full year regular job now. But something I've thought about when applying to jobs was making change, how to think about making change, whether you're in a corporate job or you're in a nonprofit job or in the government, and I don't know, maybe if anybody has any thoughts about how you navigate that, entering a field, obviously change could be made anywhere. But if anybody has any thoughts.
That's a great question. And looks like Shannon's on it. Take it away.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, a lot of times when we think about making change, it is from an individual perspective. We think about what can I do? And something that I've certainly learned in my career so far, and just in my experience in sustainability, is that oftentimes making change looks like being a catalyst for other voices, right? It looks like empowering other grassroots organizations, indigenous groups, asking how can you help, and really listening. And that alone is a change, right? That alone can bring you into some really incredible spaces and really amazing conversations where you are learning and listening in a way that you may not have had practice doing before. And that is an incredible skill that can take you anywhere, right? So when I think about making change, even if it's not in an active role, right? If you are listening and learning from others' experience, either trying to make change or even just existing in the world as it is, it can really lead you to some amazing opportunities and some challenging questions. And those are always important, right? Because part of change is asking those questions and listening to the answer in an honest and open-minded way.
Well, I'd love it if you had a tangible example of that, Shannon. Do you have something on mind that you were listening and you were able to make a change within the forestry program at HP as a result of listening?
Gosh, well, when has that not happened? I think that's kind of the core of my job, is listening and learning. And as I stated before, I just started my position in October, which sounds like a while ago, but in terms of getting up to speed in a corporate environment and getting up to speed on, well, what are we doing with our partners and our NGOs? It is all listening. It is all learning. It is all asking, how can I help you? How can I listen better? How can I more effectively understand and communicate what you're trying to do? And I practice that every single day in the work I do with our partners, particularly thinking about the Arbor Day Foundation. And it's a smaller group. And some of the work, well, a lot of the work they do is very, very hands-on with Indigenous communities, with local communities and rural areas. And Arbor Day Foundation focuses a lot on planting trees, but also on community resilience. And that is right. That's not something you can really read about in a textbook and understand the same things as when you're talking to people who are on the ground working with those communities and learning and listening. So every single day, that's my example. But yeah,
good. Yep.
Yeah, it's really wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for that. I wanted to transition to Alexis as I noticed she unmuted. So there's something about change here as well within the Nike world.
Yeah, no, I see a lot of parallels, Shannon. I mean, obviously, because you're in HP, I'm in Nike. But I wanted to say something that was really powerful. When I went to my MBA program, I actually, I went into it because I was actually at a nonprofit. It was a Latino rights nonprofit. And one of the things that I noticed was inefficiencies, and I didn't know how to solve it. And so that's actually why I got my MBA. And so I was dead set, I'm going to work in a nonprofit. That's how change happens. That is the only place, and I'm going to be there. Then they showed in my MBA program this one video. I'm never going to forget about it. And it was like, it was so quick. It was like maybe a minute or two, but it basically showed the impact that corporations have on this world. And it's ginormous. Like if you just think about shoe boxes for Nike, think about how many millions of shoe boxes exist. And if you own that program just by itself, you have a tremendous impact. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. And so it really shifted my mindset. When you're thinking about change, I think about how many people are you impacting? And it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It could be you impact one person and that one person has a ripple effect. So it's not only about that, but that was, for me, it called to me. And that's why I leaned into the corporate setting because I knew that I would have, a greater voice in that way. And so when I think about change, and Shannon actually kind of talked about this a little bit, is you have to understand the unsaid, unspoken ways of corporate to be able to navigate successfully. So there's really unique power dynamics. There's social networking that has to happen. And it's very, very unique, especially for us women. I recently did a certificate from Cornell for women in leadership, and I would highly, highly recommend considering pursuing a certificate in that way, or at least just researching it, because there's a lot of dynamics at play. So if you do enter into the corporate world, definitely understand so you can succeed. You can make that change. You can understand how you can do that with the people around you. I think that's pretty much it. Is I just think about what change matters to you. Is it one person really understanding and you having that impact? Is it 10 people? Is it not about the amount of people? Is it about something else? So that's what I would say. And let that lead your journey.
I have just one really quick thing to say to that. And I really think that managing ambiguity is actually a really important skill. And it's across every industry and it's across every field, including sustainability. But one of the authors that, one of the organizations that I track pretty closely is the Rocky Mountain Institute out of Colorado. And the founder of this organization is Omri Levins. And he wrote a book about reinventing fire, which is reinventing, energy. And I think the thing that I learned from that book And I've had an opportunity to hear him a couple of different times in person. But the thing that he does is he talks about reinventing energy being incremental. But I actually think that you need to decide that incremental change is what's important. You're never going to be able to change something overnight from A to Z, but you can get to A to A.1 to A.2. And it's all for me, it's about getting on that journey and making those changes and thinking incrementally. But if you haven't read Amory Levin's book, it came out years ago. But I think that the core message behind it hasn't changed in sustainability. And, just get on that journey and start on the change. You don't have to have your end goal for change in mind when you get on that journey. I had no clue what I was doing when I took this job, and I just got on the journey. And off I went. Same thing. I'd never traveled overseas until I got on a plane and flew to the Netherlands and started working for Philips. So, I think part of it is that adventure, but the other piece of it is also just, step out, take a risk.
Drop the mic. Thank you so much for those perspectives, Shannon, Alexis, and Diana. Those are great. Marissa, Morgan, or Liz, do you have anything to add to how to make change?
I'd just like to echo Diana's sentiment about it being incremental and not needing to have your end goal in mind right away. I definitely, going into my current fellowship, I wasn't even really thinking about specific changes that I thought that I would be making, but I've learned so much about the on-the-ground impacts that the organization I'm at has. So it kind of just came with the territory and wasn't something that I was expecting. So I definitely would like to echo that.
I don't know if you're interested at all, Frankie, in the government. But I think, I think a lot of the same lessons are true, and maybe Morgan can speak even better than me on this. But I've always worked government adjacent. I've always worked at the federal level, which can be like a real bear. Can be like really disheartening. Like so big. People have worked there for 50 years. Like the same people have been making decisions across, many administrations. And it can be pretty disheartening, but I think you have to like take your wins, right? Like, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And like any progress is good progress. So I think this is like somewhat the same point of this incrementalism, but I think it kind of to the point that folks were talking about, like in the corporate world, you have to understand corporate dynamics, but in the government world, you have to just understand like the government dynamics. And like, for me, that's like how do federal, lifelong feds make decisions and put things in that type of a box for them to make a decision about. But yeah, I think that the main thing there is like, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And pick something to kind of drive your focus towards. So like the example for us, and granted, like it's a pretty cool time to work for the federal government right now. Like everyone is focused on Justice 40. If anyone is familiar with Justice 40, like my whole job has now shifted towards like, how do we implement a clean energy transition that truly benefits the most disadvantaged communities? Like, how do we design community benefit plans? And that's like a huge win. But there's all these people around us that are like freaking out about what if the administration changes? How do we like, and granted, like some of the criticism is fair. And like, we should be talking about that. And like, we should always be doing better. But I also think it's important to keep like the wins that we do have, and the fact that like, 3 years ago when I worked at DOI, I was actually like control effing climate change and taking it out of government documents. And now I'm like advocating for like environmental justice initiatives at the Department of Energy. Like, I think that's like, we have to celebrate those things, even though it's not perfect. Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And might just add the phrase that kept popping into my mind is that you can make good change at any level. And whether it's local, whether it's at a nonprofit, at state government, federal government, in the private sector, there's so many neat places where you can lean in and make good change. And depending on where your energy and desire is, it can be on an incremental scale, or if you have a strong passion in an area, there's going to be an organization that is fighting for big change on that issue area as well. And it is all meaningful work. So there's so many spaces where I think you can invest your time and energy and your talent, and it's very worthwhile.
Oh, what a great note to end on. Thank you so much. It was just too juicy not to ask everybody on the panel. What a great question. So thank you all for contributing to that. But I am mindful that we're at 6:30 right now. So I want to, before we end, remind you all, or tell you for the first time, that the Global Day of Service is set for April 8th. And for those of you who are local to the Salem campus, there should be a sign-up link in the chat so that you can join us. But if you're outside of the area, you're encouraged to contribute service during the 2 weeks around April 8th. And then let Willamette know by tagging them, #Team Willamette. But I just want to extend my sincere gratitude for Leah for running the Zoom this whole time. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And for also providing all the communication and event infrastructure for this. Eric for getting this all set up. And then truly a note of gratitude for all of our panelists for showing up, because I am feeling so inspired right now. Thank you all for sharing your experiences.
And I just want to say thank you, Victoria, for hosting. I personally found this to be, informative and inspiring. You all are doing some amazing work in the sustainability field. And I feel very inspired by this tonight. And I hope our audience also found this valuable, and that they'll be further inspired to pursue or advance a career in sustainability. And just to plug it again, I hope I'll see some new signups for the WU Sustainability Network on WU Connect, WUSN. So that is available for people if you want to, have more information and people to talk with sustainability about. But thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you, Victoria. And thank you, Eric, for running some back-end support tonight as well. And much appreciation for joining us tonight. And I hope everyone has a good evening and take care.